Hey everyone, this is Griffin O'Connor, creator of the Eerie Tales from the Darkness podcast. I wanted to make this recording to officially state to every one of our listeners. When I first started this podcast, it was truly the first thing I had done creatively on my own. I have over 10 years experience in working in, short films and short web series, and writing. But I've always, had a team. This was something I wanted to, I guess, test myself in a sense, really show myself that I could do it, that my vision, my creativity, my passion, would emulate what I wanted to get out. So when I premiered the first episode in December of 2018, I didn't really know what to expect. For the longest time, I have looked at other podcasts, listened. A lot of them were, talk show style, true crime, and there were some horror based narration podcasts, the famous ones, the No Sleep, the Otis Genry. I might have said his name wrong, and I apologize if I did. I wanted to bring the type of theme that I grew up around. Watching the shows like, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps, Eerie, Indiana. Those were available for kids at a young age in the 90s to sort of introduce them to the supernatural and the terrifying, episodic episodes. But I didn't shy away from that because, I also started watching as I got older, and I was allowed to. The Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, like I said, Alfred Hitchcock, The Night Gallery. Can't sleep on The Night Gallery. And even the Amazing Stories, the original, not the new one. And that has just always been who I was as a writer, as a creator. I love the horror. I love the macabre. I love all of that. So when I did this podcast, I wanted to stick to that. I didn't want to try to do a full cast because I know that not only is it time consuming, but it's a little more of a budget. I bought a microphone for $15. I downloaded some editing software, Adobe, which I highly recommend, Adobe Audition. And I, pressed record and took a chance. And surprisingly, within the first week, I couldn't believe how many people had actually listened. And when people start telling me they loved it, I was like, okay, 2 years later, and I am extremely grateful for every single one of you who have ever clicked, streamed, shared, liked, followed, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I am extremely grateful. And that's why it's so difficult to actually announce this. At the very end of 2019, I started the second season. I have a tendency to rise up in the very beginning with a project, give it my all. And then when the second time comes around, I kind of feel like I've done all I can. So the second season, I will even say this, seemed a little bit of a lackluster compared to how much time and effort and editing I put into the first season. And I struggled this whole last season with, continuing the show. And it didn't come lightly. It's been a long thought process for the last few months. thinking it over, making sure that this was what I wanted, that this would be the last season of the Eerie Tales from the Darkness podcast. I can't tell you guys how much I have loved doing this show. And I'm not quitting this show because I'm not even quitting. I shouldn't say I'm quitting, because I'm not quitting the show. I'm ending the show on the highest note that I think it's at, because sometimes with seasons, shows do. They start off in their first season, on a really high level. And over the next 2, 3, sometimes even 4 seasons, they rapidly decline, because after a while you're kind of like over it. Perfect example of that, Supernatural. 15, 16 seasons, they could have stopped at 5. Don't get me wrong, I love Supernatural. But I didn't want to do that with this show. I didn't want to stress season after season, new kind of tales to tell, new kind of characters to bring, monsters to create. I wanted to end it on a high note, and that's why this show will be laid to rest, as they say. But I want you guys to know that this isn't the end of me. This has allowed me to now focus on a much bigger project that will have a little more creativity, a little more involvement from others, and a bigger production value. So nothing to announce quite yet, as it's very, very, very early pre-planning. But I hope you guys keep in touch with this network, Tuned In Network, because there's a lot coming. There's a lot coming in the future. So I've already talked way too long, probably even repeated myself. Not a shocker. So without further ado, I would like to tell you all a very humble goodbye. I want to thank you for listening every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and being a part of the Eerie Tales from the Darkness podcast. So for one last time,
Eerie